Testing, testing. Well, let me turn this light on. That's a bit better. All right, testing. I think the sound is okay. If everybody can hear me, welcome everybody to CanHammer TV. We haven't been on for a while. It's been super busy with work and dance and kind of spring, summer activities now starting with the weather getting better. So it's been busy. Apologies, we haven't streamed any live 40K for a while, and that's quite frankly a disinterest in playing 9th edition right now. And with that in mind, today we had a big leak of a lot of the core rulebook, and that's what we're going to go over. Now, actually, we knew most of it already, but it's a nice thing to get it all down on paper and talk about some of the new things that we learned today that we did not know already. So that's what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to cover this big leak that came out this morning of the 10th edition rulebook. It looks legit. I mean, somebody faked some sheets of paper and photographed them. It's way too much work to be not legit. So, and it's in sync with everything we've been learning. Nothing crazy about it. So we're going to cover that today. Tom, yes, you are the first. Thank you for joining me. It gets a bit lonely in here when nobody's chatting and nobody likes to just sit here and talk to themselves. So, well, maybe we do a little bit. That's why we do this. But yeah, it's going to be good. What we won't talk about tonight is all the faction previews that have been coming out every single weekday. We are anxiously awaiting the Custodes one, which has not come out yet. But yeah, most of them look fine. Keeping in mind, we don't know, 90% of it. We just get a little snippets here and there. But some of them look pretty good. World Eaters look pretty good. And Eldar, of course, are usually good in most editions, at least at the beginning. Marines will be fine. And so we are anxiously awaiting. I think our Custodian brethren are excited to see that I think Death Guard Terminators are T6, because there's been a lot of speculation as to what toughness Custodians will be. So who knows? But yeah, we won't talk about any of those. People can keep up to date with those on the Warhammer community. And I do tend to share them daily on the CanHammer Facebook page. With that in mind, please follow us on Facebook at CanHammer, and where you get all the updates. And welcome to subscribe and follow us here on the YouTube channel. Of course, very much appreciated. If you want to join, you can join. It's the same as Patreon. It's $5 a month, and that helps to support what we do. Welcome, Cam No Bubble, and welcome to the stream. Okay. So before we get started on this stuff that everybody is here to talk about, just some quick updates. So CCBB 2023, you can see it at ccbb.ca. That's our new website, which we worked hard on making, and everything is on there. There's also a Capital City Bloodbath 2023 event page on our Facebook page, but that's just going to direct you to the new webpage, because the Facebook page is not really designed for multiple event type things, as far as I can tell. So so do check it out. Registrations for everything at CCBB is going to open hopefully on this Friday, so in 2 days at 8 a.m. Nothing's gonna sell out, so don't go crazy. It's not like CanHammer Team Tournament where things will sell out within 20 seconds, but I think there's gonna be a lot of interest, so don't wait too long. Warhammer events, so 40K singles, 40K doubles, and Age of Sigmar championships will be registered via BCP. You can find those links on the website, or just look it up on BCP. Every other event will be registered on ccb.ca with links to the Red Dragon site, because Dan and Red Dragon is handling all the e-commerce. The shows from now, I'm going to be covering a lot of the board games that will feature in the Cardboard versus Plastic Open, and we will be talking about 40K developments as they come out, because obviously we are trying to run a big event shortly after a new edition, so we're going to try and keep abreast of all the changes and update people as things go. But we're planned for the usual 6 rounds of 40K over 2 days. And yeah, special preview, we may, and that's a pretty decent may, As people know, at CCBB, it's kind of become a tradition to fly Rob and the Honest Wargamer and the stream team over to cover the 40K at Capital City Bloodbath. Rob's a good friend of mine. I love to see him every year, and he has a good time over here, and he provides amazing coverage. So we are trying to make that happen this year. As some of you may know, his partner is Louise Sugden, recently of Warhammer Community Painting Employ, and now with her own YouTube channel called Rogue Hobbies. And Louise is actually very interested to come over and maybe do some painting seminars at CCBB. So we are trying to make this happen. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like right now, so stay tuned to the website and the Facebook page. But I'm super motivated to make it happen. It'd be great to have them over. She is super popular right now, and she's a great person and an amazing painter. And so that is definitely something we're trying to make happen. Get Louise over, make her work a little bit, but not too hard. And then if she wants to play in one of the events, that would be cool, or just hang out or do a painting all weekend. That's cool too. So we also have a paint competition, and it just occurred to me it might be cool to have some guest judging too for the paint competition. So anyway, stay tuned, but that's something we're working on. Okay, let's see who else is here. Thurgood is here. You're thinking of selling new in-box Death Guard army for World Eater, since they're basically what my White Scars used to be before they turned into White Ultramarines. Well, I mean, maybe. You don't know. But I would wait before you do anything too drastic. He thinks that Alaris will hopefully be at least T6, if not T7. I doubt they're going to be T7. But they could be T6. I think hopefully, in my mind, I'm seeing all Custodies go to T6 and Bikes go to T7. I don't know. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but I like to think of my mind were as tough as Death Guard and tougher than Marine Terminators, or might better than Ceramite, but I don't know. KR Quintero, can't wait for Custodies, but doubt we will see any Forge World. Well, they said there's Day 1 Forge World. I don't think you're going to see that in the Warhammer Community Leaks preview, but we're supposed to get Forge World, everything Day 1, so I'm going to hold them to that. Not that I have any leverage to do otherwise. I'm also trying to get a preview copy, but we're a small channel, so I don't know if anybody's going to give us anything. But we are trying to get a preview copy at least maybe a week or two early. Anyway, we'll try our best. Everything will be known by then, I'm pretty sure. Okay, let's dive into it. So if you don't know where this document is, it lives on our Discord, but it's all over the internet, I'm pretty sure. But if you want to find it easily, just go to our Discord. It is pinned in the Custodies channel, and it is in a single PDF, which is just a consolidation of all those image links. All right, let's put this up here. Okay, so here we go. So I'm just going to skip over the stuff that we kind of know about. So this is a leak. It's about 20-something pages. It's not the full rule book. Doesn't have any of the terrain rules. Doesn't have any of the kind of mission or battle type rules. It is missing a lot of those things. But it has a lot of the core rules of the game. Interestingly, a lot of the core stratagems. And should be pretty interesting to look at. So the other thing is, importantly, is the definition of engagement range and coherency is not in here. So we will see, but it's there. Okay, so this is the first part of it is just talking about the datasheet parts, which we already know about, so we won't go into those things. There's nothing new here about the datasheet parts. Then it talks about leadership tests, which are now equal or greater to than your leadership characteristic. So all the leadership stuff is going down, and we're Custodies hoping that we're pretty good on that. It talks about random characteristics, auras, and no two same auras stacking, and damage done by psychic weapons are considered psychic attacks. So there you go. All right, let's move on to the command phase. So we know most of the command phase already. It's split into command phase and battle shock phase. Battle shock, of course, is the new morale system, kind of like AOS, and there's no more morale phase. And battle shock happens right now at the beginning of your command phase, because it's going to affect how you play your turn. Everybody gets their 1 CP at the beginning of every command phase, which is fine. I believe we're all starting with much fewer CP, but I cannot remember where I saw that, and it's not in this leak. And then you're limited to 1 CP gain over the battle round as before, unless, of course, you have rules to break that. Okay, so Battle Shock, as we already know, is basically if your unit gets below half strength, and half strength being either half the number of models, less than half the number of models you started with, or less than half your starting wounds if you're 1 model, then you have to take a Battle Shock test, and if you fail, so if you roll under your leadership characteristic, you will become Battle Shocked, and when you're Battle Shocked, you will lose all OC. Your OC goes to 0, so you will not be able to beat people on objective holding, although you can still hold objectives. And you cannot use strats on that. You can't use strats on that unit, and when they fall back, they will have to do Desperate Escape, which we'll talk about in a second. The other thing, so we knew all that already. Starting strength below half strength destroyed, we know. So attached units. So when your leader joins a bodyguard unit, that is now called an attached unit, okay, capital A. And the starting strength is now considered the combination of all of those models until something dies, then it goes back to the original starting strength. So that's just explained there. It also explains that if you they count as separate units in terms of triggering things like victory points, but for all other intents and purposes that they count as a single unit, and actually they share the bodyguard toughness, not the character toughness. So that's later in the rules, but I'll give that to you for free right now. Okay, so that's it. We knew most of command phase already. So let's move on to movement phase. So movement phase, really no major changes. You can make normal move, you can make an advanced move, or you can make a fall back move. And the fallback has changed a little bit. So when you fall back, you can move just like you did before. And you can move and be in engagement range, but you can't end in engagement range. But now you can also fall back through enemy models. That used to be the old Desperate Escape stratagem, I think it was called. But now you can always fall back through enemy models, but any of your models that do move through enemy models have to make a Desperate Escape test. And remember, if you're Battle Shocked, everybody who falls back needs to make a Desperate Escape, even if you don't move through other models. And Desperate Escape, for every model, you roll d6 on a 1 to 2, it dies. So it's a 1/3 chance of losing that model. So, not something to do unless you really need to do it. And definitely disincentivizes just kind of using that as a way to get onto objectives. However, if you look at like a 20-man guard unit and they're gonna lose a few guys to desperate escape, they might still just go through you onto an objective and still kind of hold it. So it does give you some interesting flexibility. And they specify that any bits of terrain and junk on the battlefield that's under 2 inches in height doesn't really count as anything, so that's fine. Of course, we don't have the terrain rules, but that's just here in the movement phase. Everything else is the same. Stationary, normal moves, advance is the same. Just the falling back is different with the Desperate Escape. All right, and they have these kind of interesting, nice, illustrative examples, of course, with Marines and Tyranids throughout this part of the book, which is cool. And it's nicely laid out. It's got these red summary points again, which are often kind of easier to read than the whole paragraph. So again, keeping the same kind of format, putting the phases of each phase kind of out. So I like the format of the rulebook. Okay, here's the moving over terrain part. Okay, and the other thing is, so they said nobody can move through walls. Of course, we don't have the terrain rules that indicates what things can move through walls. And you can go up and over things, but you count the vertical distance. So we know all that stuff already. Fly will measure through the air diagonally. So it's official. If you have a fly and they're going up onto something, you measure diagonally, not horizontally. And of course, it can ignore intervening models. Fly does not ignore terrain. And so if you have a flying monster, and you're going up on the top of a rune, you're going to have to measure that. If you want to go over the rune, you're going to have to measure up to the top, across the top, and then down diagonally the other side. It's no more just horizontal. Now, in effect, that's only small number of inches, but it may make a difference. So that is definitely a new thing there. What's going on in the chat? People are just talking about Eldar being broken. Yeah, I mean, Eldar's always good because it's Eldar, so don't get too upset by that. Okay, so the fly change, measuring through the air diagonally, could be significant. All right, so that's fly. Okay, reinforcement step. So, this is just where you do deep striking and reserves. And reserves basically is anything that doesn't start on the battlefield. And then some of them will come in by deep strike or whatever other mechanics. And some of them will be strategic reserves, which we talk about later. But they're all considered reserves. Okay. And they can come in, and when things deep strike or come in by reserve, it is measured 9 inches away horizontally, no matter where they come in vertically. So this is really interesting. Now, probably in actuality, probably not going to make a huge difference, but sometimes it might. So especially with diagonal charge moves, if you're 9 inches away and you're in a tall enough rune, that's actually maybe a 10-inch or more charge diagonally. So that could be important. Tom, this is on our Discord. You can get it from there. It's pinned in the Custodes channel. Okay, so nothing else there that we don't know. Okay, shooting phase. So shooting phase is basically the same. You can't shoot if you advanced or fell back. You just select your targets, blah, blah, blah. Nothing's really changed there. So this lone operative. So lone operatives are basically kind of characters that are not leaders. So like assassins or other characters. And they can't usually attach, and they can be targeted if you're within 12. That's it. No bodyguarding them if you're within 12. So that's an interesting thing. Lone operative. Okay, making ranged attacks is all kind of the same. Locked in combat basically is the same. The stealth rule gives you -1 to hit, so that's a new thing for -1 to hit, a new USR. Okay, so changes to big guns. So big guns never tire, which used to be a secondary, is the rule for monsters and vehicles shooting while in engagement range of something. So they can shoot, it seems like they can shoot whatever. So it says they can shoot even while they are within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units. Ranged weapons equipped by monsters and vehicles can target 1 or more of the enemy units they are within engagement range of, even if other friendly units are within range. Now, what it doesn't say is, it doesn't say can only target enemy units within engagement range. So it seems like actually that they can target anything, including the things in engagement range. But if they shoot things in engagement range, they are -1 to hit. And I believe the old rule was only heavy weapons can do that. Now any of their weapons can do that. So that's a change. The other thing that's changed now is you can shoot monsters and vehicles while they are in combat if you're not in combat. All right, so you can select an enemy monster or vehicle within engagement range of 1 or more units from your army as a target of ranged weapons, and you will be -1 to hit. But that's pretty cool. If we're hitting on 2s, like -1 to hit, that's a pretty interesting new thing, is that you can shoot monsters and vehicles while they're stuck in combat. Spicy. Okay. So, hit roll and wound roll is the same as they currently are. 1's auto miss. 6's are called critical hit and critical wound. These are unmodified 6's, always hit and always wound, regardless of whatever. So that's some of the new nomenclature coming in. Critical hit and wound means unmodified 6's to hit and wound. And maximum modifier +1 or -1 for hits and wounds, just like in the current edition. The wounding is basically the same, comparing strength to toughness, critical wounds, blah, blah, blah. And allocating is the same as currently. If you already started allocating wounds, you got to keep putting it on there. And saving throws. So saving throws are the same, modifiable by AP, but it says here, a saving throw can never be improved by more than +1. So if you have +1 from things and then you have cover and blah, 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 you can never stack more than +1 now at the end of all modifiers. So that is an interesting change. No more +2s or +3s to save. Cool. Okay, and then this bit here is about invulnerable saves, which is unchanged. Okay, next is damage. So damage is really no different from before. The feel no pain rule is back. We all called them feel no pain anyway, but now it is officially feel no pain, which is your after damage save. And of course, it's feel no pain X plus, and plus is what you have to roll over to make your feel no pain. And it works otherwise the same. Mortal wounds is exactly the same. You allocate mortals after normal damage, even if the normal damage is saved if the mortals were in addition. Deadly Demise is the new name for explosion, and everything is just 6 inches, and Deadly Demise X is how much damage it does. So that makes it easy. You don't have to look it up. Is this 2 inches, 3 inches, 6 inches, D3 inches, 12 inches, who knows, whatever. It is 6 inches, variable amount of damage. So again, another small but nice simplification. Okay, here's a little blurb about fast dice rolling. Okay, weapon abilities. So we know most of these, but let's go over them because repetition breeds memory, and we all got to remember all these new terms. Some of them are new. So assault weapons now let you shoot when you advance without penalty. Currently they're -1 to hit, so no penalty for advancing and shooting with assault weapons. Rapid Fire X. Rapid Fire X means if you have a rapid fire weapon and you are under half range, you can add X to the number of shots. I guess it's usually double, but I guess it may not necessarily be double. So Rapid Fire X. Ignores cover is ignores cover. Twin Linked is back. Oh, the old Twin Linked, which I think went from double shots to reroll hits to something else and then disappeared in 9th. And now Twin Linked is back, meaning reroll wounds, and not failed wounds, just wounds. Pistols are the same, so you can shoot your pistol or your normal weapon, and pistols can be shot in combat. Torrent is basically for flamers or things that auto hit, so attacks will automatically hit. That's Torrent. Lethal hits means critical hits automatically wound. So unmodified hit rolls of 6, that's a critical hit, will automatically wound. No wound roll needed. That's a lethal hit. Sustained hits. We'll come to that in a second. Okay, lance. A lance weapon basically on the charge, +1 to wound, which is like the current interceptor lances on the Custodes bikes. So that's a +1 to wound for lance weapons on the charge. Wonder if the Blade Champion will be a lone operative. I don't know. I guess it could be. I think he's just going to be able to join because he could be a leader. He could be your 1 HQ. So, yeah. I don't know. It's possible. Maybe he'll have both, leader and lone operative. I don't know. Because it says if the lone operative is not attached, then it can be attacked inside 12 inches. So it doesn't mean that the lone operative can't attach. Maybe for the Assassin's datasheet specifically, it'll say cannot be attached cannot be attached. I don't know. Okay, indirect fire we already know from the previews, but basically if you shoot and it's out of line of sight, you're going to be -1 to hit and the target gets cover. So that is indirect fire, which, will that take the sting off indirect fire? I guess it depends on what other modifiers they can throw on it. So yeah. Okay, precision is the new sniper rule. So precision means that after successfully wounding an attached unit, so this decision happens after a successful wound roll. So when you come to before you make the saves, you can allocate those wounds to an attached leader instead of the bodyguard. So this is basically the sniper rule. in the 10th edition landscape. So that's precision. Blast. So blast, we already know, basically blast d6. So if it's a blast weapon, for every 5 models in the target unit, you're going to add 1 attack to that. So if you had 11 models in a unit, it would be d6 plus 2 number of attacks. So that's blast. And importantly, you cannot target units in engagement. So you can't use this to shoot at monsters or vehicles. Because those are the only things you can shoot in engagement anyway. Okay, Melta we already know. Melta X means within half range, a Melta weapon will add X to your damage. That's Melta. Heavy is changed a little bit. Heavy means if you are stationary, then if you remained stationary in the movement phase, you get +1 to hit. Instead of if you move, you get -1 to hit. So it is the opposite, more positive way of spinning it. +1 to hit if you don't move. Okay, hazardous is the new plasma explosion. So basically, if you have a hazardous weapon, and obviously it could apply to things that aren't plasma, who knows, but hazardous means that every person who shoots at all, I don't know, I can't remember looking at the plasma data sheet if it's only when it's the overcharged one or not. I think so. I can't remember, if somebody wants to let me know. But basically, if you shoot a weapon that has hazardous, you have to roll a d6 after everything is done, and on a 1, you die. If you are a character, monster, or vehicle, you take 3 mortal wounds. So it's a little bit more punishing, but it is still fairly infrequent occurrence. And if you use your character who was attached, then your character has to take the wounds, not the bodyguard unit. They do clarify that. So that's hazardous. Okay, devastating wounds. So devastating wounds just turns your critical wounds into mortal wounds. It gets confusing. But a critical wound is a unmodified 6 wound that would normally just auto wound whatever, but just do normal damage. So a devastating wound turns your critical wounds into mortals instead of normal damage. Okay, that's devastating wounds. Not to be confused with lethal hits. Okay, and then, so that's devastating wounds. Then we have sustained hits, which is exploding 6s. So sustained hits X means for every critical hit, so unmodified hit roll of 6, that dice will add X number more hits. Okay, so it's exploding hits, exploding critical hits, if you want to think of it that way. Sustained hits, exploding critical hits. So there you go, that's sustained hits. Extra attack usually means that when you fight with a weapon, I think it usually refers to a melee weapon, you can make an attack with the extra attack weapon, whatever number of attacks that weapon has. So I guess that would be like your chain swords and stuff like that. That's called extra attacks. Anti-keyword X. So anti-keyword X, we already know. Basically, it's anti a keyword. Yes, so precision does work in combat because there's a stratagem later we'll talk about that does that. But yeah, so anti-keyword X, so anti-vehicle 4+. This means against vehicles, that keyword, a critical wound happens on that dice roll. So instead of just by default being unmodified 6 to wound is a critical wound, this would be 4+, so unmodified roll of 4+ will be a auto wound, basically, like wound no matter what the toughness is. So that is anti-keyword X. It lowers the threshold for critical wound. Okay, so those are the weapon abilities. Next, big changes to charging and fighting. Okay, so this is where the meat of the big changes that we don't know yet are. So first of all, charge phase, zone phase as usual. Eligible units are units that have not advanced or fallen back, obviously, and you can't charge if you're already in engagement range, which I said is undefined, and aircraft cannot charge. So The big things is, so your charge roll will succeed if you end up in engagement range with all your declared charge targets, like currently. You're not in engagement range with people you didn't declare, like currently, and you know coherency. So that is unchanged to determine if you succeed. You must end your charge move closer to a charge target, and you must move into base to base. So base to base is not the same as engagement range. You must move into base to base if at all possible with all the models, as many models as you can. So that is a new thing. They want people to move into base to base. You must move into base to base if you can. No more shenanigans of leaving people out if you can get them in. Of course, you can still maneuver away such that you block people, but in that case, you still need to try and get in, and you need to get as close, move closer. It does still leave some room for shenanigans, but less. You can ignore terrain under 2 inches, like with movement, and flyers measure diagonally and are otherwise subject to all the same rules. And when you charge, you get a unit buff, a charge bonus, which is actually fight first, capital letters, and we'll come to that when we talk about fighting, which is right now. Okay, so those are the changes to charging. Must move into base to base, and you're going to see that's a theme throughout combat. Okay, so to fight first, they've kind of simplified it, maybe. So now everybody who has fight first fights first, and then everybody else gets to go. Of course, we don't know if there are fights last abilities and stuff like that, which is just going to put fights firsts into remaining combats time. Who knows? But for now, it seems like it's a little bit simpler, and the fight phase is much more restrictive in terms of movement. So, first of all, eligible. So, as before, if you charged or you're in engagement range, you are eligible to fight. Okay, the first major change is, so here's the fights first ability, okay? Pile in has changed. So, it's a 3-inch move as before. But you can only pile in a model if it's not base to base. So if you're already base to base, you can't move that model, which is what it was before. And you must be able to move that model that you pile in into engagement range, or it can't move. And if you can, you must get it base to base. So if you have a model that's hanging around the back and it can't end in engagement range, then that can't pile in. No more free 3-inch movements, and no more kind of like congas and stuff like that. It's very much more restrictive. So that is really interesting. So you must be in engagement range and base to base if you can in order to make a pile in. Otherwise, you can't pile in. Okay, so it's big changes to the pile in. Melee attacks is basically the same. Who can fight? So if you are first rank, must be in engagement range. And of course, if you want to pile in, that first rank will have to go base to base. And you might want to do that anyway, because the second rank can only fight if it is base to base with the first rank, and the first rank is base to base. So if the first rank is not base to base, the second rank does not get the fight regardless if they're base to base with the first rank or not. So that is an important distinction. You don't need to be first rank base to fight. However, if you want to make a pile in, you will end up base to base. And if you're not base to base, the second rank doesn't get the fight at all. And of course, the second rank can only pile in and must try and be base to base. So they're just trying to get everybody together and to make it simple, base to base. No more of this, I'm 0.1 microns away, so I can pile in 0.0098 microns and thus slowly inch my way around. And no more of those stupid shenanigans. No more trying to get your tape measure between two models that are this far apart and trying to measure it and see if it's 2 or 3 inches or no more of that. It is basically trying to get everybody base to base to count to do anything. So I kind of like that actually. Yeah, and that's going to speed the fight phase up as well and decrease the amount of feel bad shenanigans that always happens in the fight phase. Okay, and then there's consolidate. So consolidate, of course, you can do if you just fought and you can also consolidate if you charged, but your target is now gone. You won't get to make, you can make a pile-in only if you can satisfy the requirements of the pile-in. And then you can make a consolidate, which again has requirements that are new. So after fighting, you can consolidate only if you're not base to base. So if you're still in combat and you're base already, you cannot consolidate, okay? And only if you can get in engagement range of an enemy and stay coherent. And you must end up base to base if at all possible. So consolidation basically has the same restrictions as pile-in. If you can't do that, so if you can't either get an engagement range and or base to base with an enemy unit, you can instead move towards the closest objective, but only if you can get within range of the objective, which we don't know what that means. Maybe it's 3 inches, I don't know. So if you can't get into engagement range, and if you can't, by moving towards the closest objective, get within range of that objective, you can't consolidate. So no more free random movement in roughly the right direction onto an objective. No more of that. Well, you could get onto an objective, but if you're not going to get on the objective with 3 inches, then you can't. So those are big changes to pile-in and consolidate to hopefully speed the game up, less feels bad, less shenanigans. Okay. Okay, so deployment abilities. So these are some rules again. So deep strike is the same as before. Basically, if you have something that has the deep strike rule, which like probably Terminators and all that kind of stuff will have, they come in. Deep strike and all reinforcement setups are now measured 9 inches horizontally, not to wherever you end up. So we already talked about that. Okay, so Scout X means this unit before the first battle round starts, but after deployment, can make a normal movement of X number of inches, but including whatever transport they're in, as long as everyone in that unit has Scout, and they must stay 9 inches away from the enemy. And infiltrators is actually what the old Scout is. They can set up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemies and the enemy deployment zone. So that's a little bit confusing. Scout was infiltrators and anyway. So those are the two rules, Scout and infiltrate. And then goes over leaders again, which we already know. And your leader, of course, has to attach to the bodyguard unit, like kind of during setup, before deployment. And then the bodyguard unit is the shared toughness. And you can't allocate wounds to the leader until the bodyguard is dead. Okay, so strategic reserves is a type of reserve. So it says right up front, it's a special type of reserves you can use to keep units off the battlefield that are not using their own special rule to start off the battlefield. So strategic reserves are reserves, but not all reserves are strategic reserves. Okay, so these are for units that don't have special rules that allow them to start off the battlefield. So when you do this, you can put up to 25% of your total points in strategic reserve. So it's 25%. It used to be, I guess, 50%, or I think recently it was, I haven't played much, but I think it was, you could put anybody. And when you arrive, of course, it's the same rules as before. And in the second battle round, you can set up anywhere within 6 inches of a battlefield edge and outside of your enemy deployment zone and 9 inches away from enemies. And in the third round onwards, it's any battlefield edge in any zone, 9 inches away from enemies, 6 inches of the battle edge. So that has not changed. Okay, some juice stratagems. So a comment about stratagems. First of all, stratagems in general are way improved in terms of format. So if you want, green color code means anytime, blue means in your turn, red is enemy turn. So if you're just flipping through some cards, you could quickly kind of sort them out that way. There are stratagem categories, which is mostly for Crusade. Doesn't really affect anything as far as I can tell what the category it is. And this new format they have is really nice. So it's like when, target, effect, restriction. It's really nicely put out, so it makes it easy to read and without wading through a bunch of text. There's even still some kind of flare text there, but it's way easier to read now than it used to be. And so that's super nice. I like how they've done that. It's good. Okay, so here we go. The command reroll, the reroll strat is 1 CP, and it's back to basically anything. So it's not as restrictive anymore. You can reroll any roll. This includes desperate escape tests, hazardous tests, and the number of attacks or shots again. So 1 CP for the reroll as before. The fight interrupt is the same, 2 CP. Epic challenge. So for 1 CP, if your character is fighting an engaged attached unit, you get the precision rule. So your character fighting an attached unit can direct all your successful wounds to the character in the attached unit instead of the bodyguard unit. That is super interesting. And that's only 1 CP, Epic Challenge. So don't forget that one. That seems like it could be quite useful. Insane Bravery. So basically this is a 1 CP cancel your failed battle shock. So interestingly, it's only 1 CP instead of 2 CP for the morale thing. And also you don't need to spend this until you actually fail the battle shock. Then you spend this 1 CP and then they count as having passed. So you don't need to spend it until you know you failed, and it's only 1 CP. So that's the new Insane Bravery. This grenade stratagem is interesting. So basically if you have a grenades keyword unit, during the shooting phase, if they haven't shot already, you can choose them and they can throw grenades within 8 inches, and you roll 6d6 and every 4 up is a mortal wound. So that's pretty good. That's like 3 to 4, maybe more if you spike mortal wounds for a grenade unit. Maybe better than they're shooting, like guard or whatever. And the other thing, it doesn't say that they can't shoot. It doesn't say it's a shooting attack. It's just a stratagem that you do before they shoot. But it doesn't say they can't shoot. So it's not instead of shooting, which is pretty cool. Okay, Tank Shock seems pretty cool. So Tank Shock for a CP, if your vehicle charges, select whoever you charged or a unit in enemy engagement range, and then pick a melee weapon. So you can't pick like the Bane Blade, like Volcano Cannon or whatever. You have to pick a melee weapon and take the strength and roll that many d6. Okay, so these guys, tanks like big Titanics are usually like strength 9 or whatever. So 9d6 or whatever. Then if you're stronger than the toughness, add 2d6. So you could be rolling a ton of d6, and for every 5 up, you get a mortal up to a max of 6. So that is another cool thing that even like a Rhino could do a few mortal wounds on the charge for a CP. So that's an interesting Tank Shock. Okay, Rapid Ingress is also super tactical. Rapid Ingress, basically for a CP, lets you bring in a reserve unit. So not just strategic reserve, not just D-Strike, any reserve unit at the end of your opponent's movement phase. So that is super interesting. And obviously has to be in a battle round which you could normally come in. So Rapid Ingress, some tactical flexibility. Fire Overwatch. So basically Overwatch is this now, 1 CP, and you can do it after any type of movement. So fallback, advance, normal movement, or a charge. You can only do it once in a turn. So only once in the whole turn can somebody Overwatch. And it does not have to wait until the end of the phase. You just do it the moment your opponent has just set up an enemy or when they make these moves. So it's also after like a deep strike or a reserve coming in. Okay, so you can overwatch reserves and you can overwatch movements at one time per turn. And it is not keyed off ballistic skill anymore. You have to basically get critical hits. Okay, so you need an unmodified hit roll of 6 in order to score, regardless of any modifiers or ballistic skill. So that is the new Overwatch. It seems like it might be a pretty kind of more useful thing to do. Okay, go to ground is the old get cover rule for infantry. So when they're targeted, you can go to ground and get a 6+ invuln and get cover. So that's pretty sweet to get the invuln with it as well, not just cover. Smoke screen, if you have a smoke unit, so I guess maybe like a rhino, I don't know, means that you're going to get stealth, which that's what smoke screen used to do, like -1 to hit, but you also get cover. So that's 1 CP. And heroic intervention. Okay, heroic intervention has changed. It's 2 CP now. It happens, this is like the old stooping dive basically. So it's 2 CP, and stooping dive was 3 CP. It is right after the charge move was made, not the end of the charge phase when heroics happen now. So somebody charges you, you want to heroic them, you do it right away after that charge move, okay? Because currently, if you can put some people into your units, then they can't heroic. And then you have to be within 6 inches, okay, in order to use heroic. So it's not like 3-inch thing anymore. And you have to roll to charge. So you could fail that heroic. So it's like a counter charge, just like old stooping dive used to be. So that's super interesting. Now the chances of failing it are low, but it's still failable. And it says it's a, you resolve that charge, like it's a charge phase, so you could spend a CP to re-roll that. And you don't get the fight first bonus. Because although you count as charging, you don't get the charge bonus. And only vehicles that are walkers can also do this. So anybody can heroic. 1 unit, yeah. Anybody, not just characters, anybody including walker vehicles can heroic now for 2 CP within 6 inches right after you charge, and they have to make a charge roll. So that is super interesting change to heroic intervention. I suspect this means the end of our heroic shield host, which I thought anyway, but okay, so that's heroic intervention. Oh, and that is the end of the leak. Okay, so there we go. That's what we got so far. Hopefully we'll get the rest of it soon. That would be nice. And let's go look at some questions. I don't think we have many questions to go through. Just one, combat tricks, paladins, consolidates. Yeah, so, you know, we kind of went through that. I think it's going to be decreased, but not absent. And, yeah. Okay. Thanks very much for watching, guys. That was a quick run through of the new leak. And we will be covering things more as we come on. And thank you for watching and following and subscribing. CCBB 2023 signups start on Friday morning, so keep an eye on that. And everybody have a good night, and we'll see you next time.